All opinions and quotations in no way represent River West Radio and are the sole responsibility of the producer, guests, and callers. River West Radio is not liable for any legal issues arising from the content of this program.
You are obsolete, Mr. Wordsworth. You have no function, Mr. Wordsworth. You're an anachronism, like a ghost from another time.
I am nothing more than a reminder to you that you cannot destroy truth.
You're a bug, Mr. Wordsworth, a crawling insect, an ugly, misformed little creature who has no purpose here, no meaning.
I am a human being. I exist. And if I speak one thought out loud, that thought exists, even after I'm shoveled into my grave.
Delusions, Mr. Wordsworth. Delusions, the Bible, poetry, essays of all kinds, all of it an opiate to make you think you have a strength when you have no strength at all. You have nothing but spindly limbs and a dream, and the state has no use for your kind.
Yeah? Well, we're gonna have to do something about that. This is RiverWestRadio.com, community-supported radio streaming live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm your host. My name is Michael Wordsworth, and welcome to Breaking Down the News, the show that presents the news highlights of the week, but with a twist. Breaking Down the News is more concerned in bringing you information that wasn't covered on the front pages. Headlines you don't want to miss, because not listening could be dangerous to your freedom, liberty, and health.
Good afternoon. It is September 19th, 2012. Congratulations, we made it this far. I am Michael Wordsworth. This is Breaking Down the News. Caitlin Redding in the house.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Today we're going to open up with the fact about the QE3. I want to explain real quick. Some of you may know what quantitative easing is. Others may not. Let's break it down for you, shall we? QE, which is short for quantitative easing, is what's the best way? I've heard it as a currency war. I've heard it described as just a way to print more money. Basically, it's money fabrication from nothing, printing money out of nothing. How will that affect us? Well, I have several articles today that point out how that will affect us and try to get you to understand why understanding QE3, QE1, QE2, QE3, what this is about. Don't let them fool you with their fancy economic terms. It's just a way to say, you know, look, we're going to rob you again, and we're going to use fancy words to fool you. So let's start off right now letting you know how is this new quantitative easing. Sounds like a good thing, doesn't it? Oh, well, they're easing the quantitativeness. Well, quantitative means to actually put a number to something, give it a quantitative value. Easing, I don't even know how they get it. Just sounds nice, doesn't it? Quantitative easing. So let's get into this report. One moment. The Federal Reserve is systematically destroying Social Security and the retirement plans of millions of Americans. This article from Michael Snyder from The Economic Collapse. Last week, the mainstream media hailed QE3 as the quick fix that the U.S. economy desperately needs, but the truth is that the policies that the Federal Reserve is pursuing are going to be absolutely devastating for our senior citizens. By keeping interest rates at exceptionally low levels, the Federal Reserve is absolutely crushing savers and is systematically destroying Social Security. Meanwhile, the inflation that QE3 will cause is going to be absolutely crippling for the millions upon millions of retired Americans that are on a fixed income. Sadly, most elderly Americans have no idea what the Federal Reserve is doing to their financial futures. Most Americans that are approaching retirement age have not adequately saved for retirement, and the Social Security system that they are depending on is going to completely and totally collapse in the coming years. Right now, approximately 56 million Americans are collecting Social Security benefits. By 2035, that number is projected to grow a whopping 91 million. By law, the Social Security Trust Fund must be invested in U.S. government securities, but thanks to the low interest rate policies of the Federal Reserve, the average interest rate on those securities just keeps dropping and dropping. The trustees of the Social Security system had projected that the Social Security Trust Fund would be completely gone by 2033, But because of the Fed policy of keeping interest rates exceptionally low for the foreseeable future, it is now being projected by some analysis that Social Security will be bankrupt by 2023. Overall, the Social Security system is facing a $134 trillion shortfall over the next 75 years. Yes, you heard that correctly. The collapse of Social Security is inevitable, and the foolish policies of the Federal Reserve are going to make that collapse happen much more rapidly. The only way that the Social Security system is going to be able to stay solvent is for the Social Security Trust Fund to earn a healthy level of interest. By law, all money deposited in the Social Security Trust Fund must be invested in U.S. government securities. This report from the Social Security Administration itself, and I quote, "By law, income to the trust funds must be invested on a daily basis in securities guaranteed as to both principal and interest by the federal government. All securities held by the trust funds are special issues of the United States Treasury. Such securities are available only to the trust funds. In the past, the trust funds have held marketable Treasury securities, which are available to the general public. Unlike marketable securities, special issues can be redeemed at any time at face value. Marketable securities are subject to the forces of the open market and may suffer a loss or enjoy a gain if sold before maturity. Investment in special issues gives the trust funds the same flexibility as holding cash." So, in order for the Social Security Ponzi scheme to work, those investments in government securities need to produce healthy returns. Unfortunately, the ultra-low interest rate policy of the Federal Reserve is making that impossible. The average rate of interest earned by the Social Security Trust Fund has declined from 6.1% in January 2003 to 3.9% today, and it is going to continue to go even lower as long as the Fed continues to keep interest rates super low. A recent article by Bruce Crasting detailed how this works. Just check out this example, and I'm quoting him here. $135 billion of old bonds matured this year. This money was rolled over into new bonds with a yield of only 1.375%. The average yield on the maturing securities was 5.64%. The drop in yield on the new securities lowers Social Security's income by $5.7 billion annually. That means a year. Over the 15-year term of the investments, that comes to a lumpy $86 billion. I love that, a lumpy $86 billion. So what happens when the Social Security Trust Funds run dry? As Bruce Crasting also noted, all Social Security payments would immediately be cut by 25%. Ouch! Anyone who is 55 or older should be worried about this. Based on current law, all Social Security benefit payments must be cut by 25% when the TF is exhausted. This will affect 72 million people. The economic consequences will be severe. In other words, it would be a complete and total nightmare. Sadly, the truth is that the Social Security Trust Fund might not even make it into the next decade. Most Social Security Trust Fund projections assume that there will be no recessions and that there will be a very healthy rate of growth for the U.S. economy over the next decade. So what happens if we have another major recession or even worse? And most Americans know that something is up with the Social Security. According to a Gallup survey, 67% of all Americans believe there will be a Social Security crisis within 10 years. Part of the problem is that there are way too many people retiring and not nearly enough workers to support them. Back in 1950, each retiree's Social Security benefit was paid for by 16 U.S. workers. But now things are much, much different. According to new data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are now only 1.75 full-time private sector workers for each person that's receiving Social Security benefits in the United States. Boy, it's kind of like, that is incredible. And remember, the number of Americans drawing on Social Security will increase by another 35 million by the year 2035. Another factor that is rapidly becoming a major problem is the growth of the Social Security Disability Program. Since 2008, 3.6 million more Americans have been added to the rolls of the Social Security Disability Insurance Program. Today, more than 8.7 million Americans are collecting Social Security disability payments. So how does this compare to the past? Well, back in August 1967, there were approximately 65 workers for each American that was collecting Social Security disability payments. Today, there are only 16.2 workers for each American that is collecting Social Security disability payments. The Social Security Ponzi scheme is rapidly approaching a crisis point. Sadly, the Federal Reserve has made it incredibly difficult to save for your own retirement. Millions upon millions of baby boomers that diligently save money for retirement are finding their savings accounts are paying out next to nothing thanks to the ultra-low interest rate policies of the Federal Reserve. The following is one example of how low interest rate policies of the Fed have completely devastated the retirement plans of many elderly Americans. So if you're elderly, please listen up out there. You can understand the impact of the invisible tax on the elderly by watching the decline of interest income from $50,000 invested in a 5-year Treasury obligation. As recently as 2000, this would have yielded about 6.15% and an interest income of $3,075 a year. Now, the same obligation is yielding 0.7% and an interest income of $350 a year. Wow, what a drop. This is the lowest yield on this maturity of Treasury debt since the Federal Reserve started keeping an index of these yields in 1953. But it's more than a low interest rate. It's an income decline of nearly 89% in just 12 years. And after you account for inflation, those that put money into savings accounts today are actually losing money. Of course, most Americans have not saved up much money for retirement anyway. According to the Employee Benefit Research Institute, 46% of all American workers have less than $10,000 saved for retirement, and 29% of all American workers have less than $1,000 saved for retirement. Overall, a study conducted by Boston College's Center for Retirement Research discovered that the American workers are $6.6 trillion short of what they need to retire comfortably. So, needless to say, we have a major problem. Baby boomers are just starting to retire. The Social Security system is still solvent at the moment. Yet the number of elderly Americans that are experiencing financial problems is already soaring. For example, between 1991 and 2007, the number of Americans between the ages of 65 and 74 that filed for bankruptcy rose by a staggering 178%. Also at this point, 1 out of every 6 elderly Americans is already living below the federal poverty line. So how bad are things going to get when Social Security collapses? That is a frightening issue to think about. In the short term, millions upon millions of retired Americans that are living on fixed incomes are going to be absolutely crushed by the inflation that QE3 is going to cause. Just like we saw with QE1 and QE2, a lot of the money from QE3 is going to end up in agricultural commodities and oil. That means that retirees and all the rest of us are going to end up paying more for food at the supermarket and gasoline at the pump. But those on fixed incomes are not going to see a corresponding increase in their incomes. That means that their standards of living will go down. Things are tougher for retirees right now, but they are going to get a lot tougher. Right now, there are somewhere between 40 million senior citizens, and by 2050, that number is projected to increase to 89 million. So how will our society cope with more than twice as many senior citizens? Sadly, we will likely never get to find out. The truth is that our system is almost certainly going to totally collapse before then. We are rapidly approaching a financial crisis unlike anything we have ever seen before in U.S. history, and the foolish policies of the Federal Reserve just keep making things even worse. I'm Michael Wordsworth. These are words worth listening to. Stay tuned.
You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com.
Experiments have shown that less than 1 minute after the viewer begins to watch television, the brain switches from beta-level consciousness, associated with active and logical thought, to alpha level, which is associated with passive acceptance and suggestibility. This is why advertisers spend billions of dollars a year on commercials, as well as product placement within TV shows. Political messages are implanted in fictional TV programs as the relaxed meditative state of the viewer is receptive to the programming.
You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
This is Breaking Down the News, bringing you headlines that should have made the front pages. Streaming live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3:30 p.m. Central Standard.
A Texas woman sues Walmart for ripping up her $100 bills. A woman is suing a San Antonio Walmart after two employees ripped apart two $100 bills she used for payment. After having police called on her and being detained for about 3 hours, Texas resident Julie Garcia says she will be pursuing a lawsuit against the chain for false imprisonment and emotional distress after two employees ripped up both of her $100 bills that she had obtained from an earlier vehicle sale and subsequently accused her of counterfeiting money. Actually, interesting, those Walmart employees, they could have been arrested for defacing U.S. currency.
Yes, they could very easily have been charged with that.
But we know you're working at Walmart because either one, you are so desperate, or two, you're that stupid and you can't get another job anywhere else. And, well...
we don't want to accuse anybody of being stupid.
Yeah, God forbid. Look, I mean, I don't know, myself included. You know, we all can do stupid things. It's hard to get 100% infallibility rate. Just try. Well, according to Garcia's complaint, on December 18th, 2010, she presented the cashier with a $100 bill, one $50 bill, and change. The cashier inspected the $100 bill, turned to another cashier, and had a brief discussion, and returned to her register to tell the plaintiff, which in this case is Miss Garcia, that her money was fake. The cashier proceeded to rip Garcia's $100 bill in half without performing any counterfeit detection test, at which point Garcia said that the metallic strip in the $100 bill was clearly visible. After ripping the bill, did the cashier use a counterfeit detection pen when Garcia says she saw it turn yellow, a color she says means the bill is real, having herself previously worked retail? The cashier refused to acknowledge the pen's evidence and instead called the manager and told Garcia she was keeping the money. All right, well, this article goes on, but I didn't want to, get too far. We're going to turn you over to Caitlin. Hopefully she's got some interesting stuff.
Yeah, I was looking at an article. We've seen this guy before. His name is, let me get this right, Nouriel Roubini.
Nouriel Roubini, yeah.
Are you familiar with him?
He's known as Dr. Doom.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Well, he says he's the chairman of the Roubini Global Economics. Professor.
He's also a professor at Cambridge.
Stern School of Business, New York University.
Oh, Stern, okay.
And co-author of the book Crisis Economics.
Yeah, those who follow financial markets eventually run into Nouriel Roubini. I always get him confused with Robin Rubens from the Clinton administration, Secretary of Treasury. But yes, Nouriel Roubini.
Well, this article isn't hugely long, but I think it's good. I mean, we ran across something by him last week, I believe. I'm not sure if we were looking in the Wall Street Journal or maybe the New York Times. He tries to alert people. He seems to be one of these guys trying to break things down and explain things for us to understand.
He is, and some, I don't want to call him an alarmist, but some would.
I think he's a realist. Maybe that might be.
With you, despite the fact that he's giving you information you may or may not want to hear.
Well, I was actually on the hunt for articles on QE3 and couldn't really find very much, and so.
Oh, don't worry, I got that covered. I got them all opened up and ready to go.
All right.
Later.
Okay.
Yeah, I apologize for that opening article. I didn't realize that was that long, but it pertained to elderly citizens.
Sure.
anybody over 55 years old needs to know that your Social Security benefits, I don't know how it's going to go in the future, man. I just don't know.
Yeah. Well, then just never retire, I guess. Well, I found it was interesting because he does mention QE3 in his article, and his article is actually called Is Capitalism Doomed? So he's kind of coming in at it from the back door, and I'm noticing that a lot of people have been trying to get their opinions published by starting out with a title which would lead you to conclude one thing, and then they slip in some of these current events. I think this article is worth reading, in that I think it explains some things if you haven't had enough explanation so far. This starts the massive volatility and sharp equity price correction now hitting global financial markets signal that most advanced economics are on the brink of a double-dip recession. A financial and economic crisis caused by too much private sector debt and leverage led to a massive releveraging of the public sector in order to prevent Great Depression 2.0. But subsequent recovery has been anemic and subpar in most advanced economies, giving painful deleveraging. So this is something, Michael, that you've been talking about quite a bit, is trying to have people understand about the debt, public debt, and the purchasing of debt, and now the releveraging of debt. He continues, now a combination of high oil and commodity prices, turmoil in the Middle East, Japan's earthquake and tsunami, Eurozone debt crisis, and America's fiscal problems, and now its rating downgrade, have led to a massive increase in risk aversion. Economically, the United States, the Eurozone, the United Kingdom, and Japan are all idling. Even fast-growing emerging markets as China, emerging Asia, and Latin America, and export-oriented economies that rely on these markets, Germany and resource-rich Australia, are all experiencing sharp slowdowns. Until last year, policymakers could always produce a new rabbit from their hat to reinflate asset prices and trigger economic recovery, fiscal stimulus, near zero interest rates, and 2 rounds of quantitative easing, ring fencing of bad debt, and trillions of dollars in bailouts and liquidity provision for banks and financial institutions. Officials tried them all. Now they've run out of rabbits. Fiscal policy currently is a drag on economic growth in both the Eurozone and the UK. Even in the U.S., state, local governments, and now the federal government are cutting expenditure and reducing transfer payments. Soon enough, they will be raising taxes. Now, I'm assuming that when they're talking about reducing transfer payments, I'm figuring that that probably has something to do with public monies. I'm not sure on that. We'll have to get back to you on what that means. Oh, I lost my place here. Sorry, folks. The fiscal policy currently is a drag on economic growth in both the Eurozone and UK, even the U.S. The federal governments are cutting expenditure and reducing transfer payments. Soon enough, they'll be raising taxes. Another key issue here. Another round of bank bailouts is politically unacceptable and economically unfeasible. Most governments, especially in Europe, are so distressed that bailouts are unaffordable. Indeed, their sovereignty at risk, and is actually fueling concern about the health of the European banks, which hold most of the increasingly shaky government paper. Now, could monetary policy help very much? Quantitative easing is constrained by the above-target inflation in the Eurozone and the UK. The U.S. Federal Reserve will likely start a 3rd round of quantitative easing, again, QE3, but it will be a little too late. Last year's $600 billion QE2 and $1 trillion in tax cuts and transfers delivered growth of barely 3% for 1 quarter. Then growth slumped below 1% in first half of 2011. QE3 will be much smaller and will much less likely reinflate asset prices and restore growth. So this is really becoming an absolute global concern.
It is indeed, and we're going to cover that subject more today. For now, let's take a break and do an interview with Henry Kissinger.
Oh.
We were lucky enough to have him, so let's get him on here. I'm Michael Wordsworth. We'll be right back with Henry Kissinger. Thank you for listening today. We're talking about QE3, how it affects you, Social Security, and apparently the globe, because everything's tied to the U.S. dollar. It's a serious subject, but we'll try to make fun of it, won't we, Caitlin?
Yeah, just proof over and over again of how we affect
smile
everybody.
And laugh, smile. Yes, indeed.
And shuffle on along.
We'll be right back.
Right.
You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com.
And now it is time to make light of the issues.
War criminals. I mean, we used to hunt down war criminals, put them on trial, and have them executed. Today, you have so many war criminals running around today. You've got Kissinger, George Bush, Barack Obama. All these guys should be put on trial. George Bush can't even go to Switzerland anymore. I'm telling you, they wanted to arrest him. But in America, it's just, yeah. You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com. This is a special Breaking Down the News celebrity call-in segment where we have known political figures call in and conduct an interview. Today's guest, he was once the National Security Advisor under Nixon during the Vietnam War era, and later Secretary of State. He's probably the most prominent unindicted war criminal roaming around today. I'd like to bring onto the show Mr. The Bloodstains Won't Come Off My Hands no matter how hard I scrub them, Kissinger. Welcome to the show, you evil bloodthirsty monster.
Good afternoon, Michael. Thank you for having me on your show.
Now, you've managed to really piss off a lot of people during your long career as a warmonger hiding in sheep's clothing.
I really have. If I had a conscience, this would really bother me. The illegal, we do immediately. The unconstitutional takes a little longer.
I'm not sure what the hell that means, but you were once a big man in foreign affairs throughout the world, and I bet it's hard to get on anyone's show these days, since people have been rightfully charging you as a war criminal.
The nice thing about being a celebrity is that if you bore people, they think it's your fault. Actually, I make a few public appearances now and then. I was recently honored at the conference on Indochina.
What?
I know. It is ironic, isn't it?
Wait. Let me get this straight. You, the man who, along with Richard Holbrooke, was part of the team in the Nixon White House, helping to craft the Vietnam policy, including Operation Phoenix, which saw the assassination of South Vietnamese political and religious leaders. You are attending this conference.
A country that demands moral perfection in its foreign policy will achieve neither perfection nor security.
But you, Mr. The Bloodstains Won't Come Off My Hands no matter how hard I scrub them, Kissinger, authorized the war to bleed over into Cambodia. The terrible consequence was the eventual rise of Pol Pot and the Cambodian killing fields, and now they invite you to a conference on Indochina hosted by Hillary Clinton?
Imagine my chagrin. Ha 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 ha. Hillary Clinton had to introduce me, which wasn't easy, given her rude comments about me prior to the conference.
Oh, come on. She was just probably covering her own tush. You know she worships at the same altar of death that you do.
Perhaps, but it was ironic that she had to introduce me,
Now, in recent years, Mr. The bloodstains won't come off my hands no matter how hard I scrub them, Kissinger. You have come under fire for private comments once made to Nixon during the Bangladesh-Pakistani war, in which you described the then Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi as a, quote, bitch and a witch.
I regret that now.
What, saying that?
No, getting caught saying that. I regret that now.
You also said the Indians are bastards shortly before the war.
I did. What are you going to do, you know?
It's kind of surreal with the coup attempt in Ecuador that this harkens back to your policies in Latin America, which saw the overthrow and murder of Salvador Allende in Chile, and your prompting of Operation Condor in the Plan Mercurio, which oversaw the kidnapping of peoples in Latin American countries, leftist activists. These people were disappeared under Operation Condor, and now we have Hillary Clinton praising you for this evil well done.
It's not a matter of what is true that counts, but a matter of what is perceived to be true.
Do you see a parallel between Vietnam and Afghanistan today?
The war profits must flow unabated. Military men are just dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns in foreign policy.
I can't believe you just said that.
Well, I said it before, and I will say it again. Here, I will say it again right now. Military men are just dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns in foreign policy.
Mr. Kissinger, you are indeed a madman. It is hard to believe that you played such a pivotal role in our country's foreign policy for decades, and that is all the time I will lend to your madness. You're out of here.
It was a pleasure being on your show, Michael. Good day.
And good riddance. I am Michael Wordsworth, having just interviewed Henry, the bloodstains won't come off my hands no matter how hard I scrub them, Kissinger. Back in a moment. All opinions and quotations in no way represent River West Radio and are the sole responsibility of the producer, guests, and callers. River West Radio is not liable for any legal issues arising from the content of this program. You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
This is Breaking Down the News, bringing you headlines that should have made the front pages. Streaming live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3:30 p.m. Central Standard.
Okay, we are back, and I was just talking to people outside here. You know, I couldn't help it. I had to ask them, and the people, believe me, the people that I was just talking to out here, they're not stupid. They have educations. They're very intelligent. They run their own business. I asked them, do you know what QE is? Quantitative easing? And they all said no. And I was like, oh, a big sigh came over me because I was like, okay, well, I explained that it's a fancy term that's designed to make you not care about the fact that they're screwing you over and taking your money. There's two ways to rob you. One way is to come up and say, give me your money, or forcibly take it from you. Another way is to devalue your currency, raise your taxes, lower your services, and increase the prices of everything across the board. When that happens, you actually got a pay cut at work. And where is this true? You can leave $100 in your bank account, and you can say, well, I still have $100 bills in my bank account. I wasn't robbed. Well, in a sense, yes, you were, in the clever, crafty way that these banksters, part gangster, part banker, actually conduct robberies. They don't go in. So actually, John Corzine of MF Global, I apologize. He did, in fact, go into your bank accounts. For those of you that had holdings in MF Global, he took $1.2 billion directly out of their accounts. What happened? Congress brought him up. He lied to them. He wasn't even given a slap on the wrist. The whole thing blew over. Supposedly, MF Global has been paying those accounts back, and everything's just honky freaking dory. I don't think it is. There is a trouble with printing money out of nothing. You can't just print money out of nothing indefinitely. I understand that for decades now, we've become so used to the government announcing billions here, billions there. Oh, we spent $1 trillion on this. There's Social Security's up here. These numbers mean little to us, honestly. I mean, a lot of us are lucky to have $50 extra spare cash in our wallets at any given time. And on those days, we're feeling pretty financially up there, aren't we? And when these guys are talking about billions, those numbers are just, honestly, they're fictitious in terms of we can't really comprehend what that really means. Well, there is a trouble with printing money. QE3 reflects a colossal failure to address our predicament, and we're going to discuss that at today's show. For a while now, I've been expecting a coordinated global central bank action that would seek to print more money out of thin air. That's what we're talking about. Quantitative easing is just printing more money out of thin air, and they call it QE for short. Now we have two of the most important central banks, that of the U.S. Federal Reserve, and in Europe, the ECB, the European Central Bank, have committed to open-ended, limitless QE, which is another way of saying limitless printing of more money out of thin air. The most recent announcement came from the Fed, and it has these features. Listen up. Number one, the creation of $40 billion a month out of thin air to purchase agency mortgage-backed securities. 2, the continuation of Operation Twist, which uses short-term treasury bills and notes on its books to purchase long-term treasury paper. That's 10 and 30-year bonds. 3, when MBS payments come in, the MBS payments, which are known as money-backed securities, they eventually have to pay up, and when the Fed holds over $840 billion of those, they will buy still more mortgage-backed security paper, rolling the payments into the new mortgage-backed securities, as it were. Taken together, the Fed will expand its balance sheet holdings of long-term assets by $85 billion per month through the end of the year. But wait, there's more. This time, unlike the prior two quantitative easing efforts, the actions will be taken without any predefined limit. Can you imagine that? It's the blank check to Congress syndrome. That's what this is.
It's not going to work.
And it's not a blank check, because you got to keep in mind, the government has no money of themselves. Ultimately, it's not capital until you and I actually go to work for it. They can print it off, but that piece of paper isn't worth anything unless we go and actually earn it. That's what the GDP, I mean, part of the GDP, yeah, gross domestic product, yeah, that's part of what it is. Well, this quantitative easing, or this unlimited spending of fake money printed from thin air, will continue until the labor market improves substantially, according to Fed Bren Bernanke. Well, whatever substantial improvement means, I don't know. I mean, what? But if deemed necessary, the Fed will purchase additional assets and employ other policy tools. Now, as if that were not enough, for good measure, the Fed committed to a 6-month extension of the 0.0% to 0.25% target range for the Fed's funds rate until at least mid-2015. That laundry list can be summarized as we will do whatever it takes to keep this economy going. If anyone was still wondering if the Fed would allow deflation to happen on its watch under Bernanke, perhaps the above issue points in combination with quantitative easing 1 and 2 will settle their minds. But will it work? No, the stimulus hasn't produced anything so far. Sometimes you hear this quantitative easing tied into stimulus money, and we're all like, well, yeah, but Stimulus has got to be good. Think about it. Since 2008, a lot of stimulus money's been spent. What has it gotten us? For a while, a lot of people were tricked into thinking by media headlines that the economy was improving, but it wasn't. And you just have to look at the facts today to see that if the economy is getting better, my question is, why do we need more quantitative easing? I mean, why do we need more stimulus if it actually is getting better and not to worry about it?
You know, it's interesting because Noriel's article went on to suggest at some point that it may actually end up being the European banks that figure out how to decrease debt, because you and many other people share the opinion that you're just going to have to throw out some of this debt. Now that's
the proper move would be to nationalize, to not just nationalize the banks, but actually create a national bank. Go back to having Congress actually issuing currency. In the Constitution, it's called coin currency, but I mean paper too. We need a real national bank. It's pretty well understood now that the Federal Reserve is not a national bank. It's a private institution owned by private people. I mean, people, you know, actual, not government officials, not whatever, bankers, central bankers. Caitlin?
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Noriel suggests that the right balance today requires creating jobs partly through additional fiscal stimulus aimed at productive infrastructure investments. And by the way, that is probably the only thing that we did see come out of a lot of the stimulus money that went in. People are asking why there's been so much construction on roads and bridges in the last year and a half or so. Well, that's what they were waiting for, was the stimulus money to come through. And that is one of the things that has always been a ploy for creating a healthy economic situation, is going into infrastructure. So we've already seen, so his first point is valid because we've already seen that work even in the United States. So it also requires more progressive taxation, more short-term fiscal stimulus with medium and long-term fiscal discipline, lender of last resort support by monetary authorities to prevent ruinous runs on banks, reduction of the debt burden for insolvent households and other distressed economic agents, and stricter supervision and regulation of a financial system run amok, breaking up too big of fail banks, and, oh, here's a word, oligopolistic truce. Oligopolistic.
Polistic? Oh, oligarchical. It comes from oligarchy. Oligarchy is
okay.
You know what a monarchy is?
Yes.
An oligarchy is several people running the system.
Which is what you've been alluding to all this time.
Just like a monopoly is exclusive, one company owns the entire market.
Exactly. So
an oligopoly would be several people sharing in that market.
Like a board, maybe? A board of trustees?
No, it would have to be multiple trusts. It would have to be several different boards from several different companies not affiliated or owned by each other.
Interesting.
I mean, they can.
That's going to be getting increasingly more difficult to find.
Okay, Russia is an oligarchy. That's a good way to put it. All
Sure.
they did is they divided up their wealth and they said, all right, you rich guys, you're going to run this, and you're going to run that.
Yeah. So I think I think no matter what, we're looking at this debt reduction. Some of the debt reduction is simply going to have to come from throwing away some of the debt. Now, how do you do that? Well, you just have to take a certain pile of that paper they're printing and
write it off.
And throw it away.
Especially the derivatives. Here's the sad part, Caitlin, is the ingenious ways that these banksters have tied these debts into your retirement and investment funds.
Sure.
So it's kind of the same problem Jesus had when he stated his parable. I can't rip out the bad weeds without ripping out the good ones. The roots are all tangled. It's a planned
metaphor.
It's a metaphor, right? But you understand how, like, if you have bad flowers and good flowers, how would you really, you cut off the stems, but if the weeds are going to keep coming back, and you're going to de-head your flowers, that's not going to be pretty. And the weeds are going to eventually use the extra sunlight to get forward. That's a damn good metaphor for what we got going on here in terms of our financial. How hard it is to write off these debts. What it means is, we have to figure out. We would have to figure out what everybody actually has coming to them. Guarantee that through the new currency and the new nationalized bank, but then write off everything that's fictitious. They call those toxic assets. That's when you have an asset-backed mortgage security, whatever the hell it is, and it's toxic because it's got these derivatives tied into it. It's contaminated with bad money. That's a good way to say it. The garden is fully infiltrated with weeds, and the toxic paper is often bundled up into these securities packages. So now it's kind of like 6 of one, half dozen of another.
It's like the bad stuff being thrown into a bag, $5 for everything that's in this bag. There'll be two things, maybe three that really grab you, but then a couple pieces will be junk, stuff that you're going to either throw out or not know what to do with. It'll sit in a drawer. So I think what we're seeing is that all of the bad debts that were down to pennies on the dollar were the ones that they were repackaging in order to try to inflate the value of them again. So I would think it would take any second generation package debt and beyond, like third and fourth, would have to be just wiped off the books, discouraged away, and ignored because of the fact it is so valueless. You have to let it go.
If you think the Federal Reserve's quantitative easing will only affect the U.S. dollar, think again. Now that the United States has officially begun its third round of money printing to the tune of at least $40 billion a month, central banks around the world will also act to defend their currencies in response. Moreover, because everyone is joining the fray, all of that extra money will make its way into key resource stocks and commodities, adding further upside price pressure to essential goods like food and fuel. It's a race to the bottom, and the losers are the 99.9% of us who aren't being kept in the loop. Quantitative easing is really another word for currency wars. A weak U.S. currency puts continued pressure on the Japanese yen, the Chinese yuan, the South Korean won, the Australian dollar, and other currencies, all of them pegged to the dollar. Cheap money also fuels speculation, and this money quickly drifts into commodity markets, and the ETFs that help propel commodity market speculation. This is inflationary for food prices. The lower the U.S. dollar, the greater the intensity of currency wars. The break is sure to happen at some point. You can't just simply have a race to the bottom. Who's going to win?
I'm not sure if that's exactly completely accurate. What Nuriel is saying is that a country would have to try to find a way to drive down the value of its own currency in order to be able to begin economic regrowth. So what he's pointing out is that now all of the big countries, all the big industrial nations are trying to do this, and they can't do it at once. So this is the race. Everybody's trying to do this all at the same time.
That is what I'm talking about.
And they have to take turns.
They have since 2008. If you've noticed, if you follow financial markets like I do, the way they do it is, okay, America's dollar weakens in relation to the euro. They say the euro is stronger. It takes it used to be $1.48. Oh, it was above $1.50 at one point to equal a euro. And then the euro dropped down, and the dollar appeared strong. And then the euro grew again, and the dollar weakened. Well, the thing is, if you look at the slope, you have an overall decline. Each time that it comes back to the other country, you're being brought down another peg, another level in value, dollar value. Look, the weakness in the U.S. dollar will hurt export-dependent economies and companies. This is from the CNBC. It explains it pretty well. Mainstream media news. There are two ways this may end, neither of which is going to be good for the average Joe like you and me. The Fed continues to print so much money that prices for food, gas, utilities, and other key commodities that are linked to U.S. dollar movements will rise exponentially. This rise in prices will accelerate the pressure on consumers as more jobs are lost in an ever-progressing, self-reinforcing economic death spiral. And that's from the CNBC. I love their good job. I mean, they're using, that's the way I like to. I love that statement. A self-reinforcing economic death spiral. I would call it, in short, a negative feedback loop.
Oh, I like that term very much. It gives you an idea of a fiery crash coming from outer space.
The pressure of rising prices, however, even though the Dow Jones may reach 20 or 50,000 points. Now, that's from CNBC. Right now, it's at 13,000. Holy cow.
It's not going to go to 20,000. That's ridiculous.
Well, here's the interesting... We get to watch this and watch and learn, because it is a learning curve for all of us. The reason why stocks are up so high right now, they're sitting at 13,000 or 12,994, something like that, is not because the value of the stocks have gone up, but because, in fact, it takes more dollars to buy them. It's a strange relationship that takes place there. The more dollars it takes to buy these same stocks, the higher the Dow goes up. I mean, that's... I wish I could pull off some of these. Actually, I really don't, because then I'd be in financial trouble, and these guys are in financial trouble. Well... they're saying, well, that's amazing. I don't think Dow Jones will ever hit 20 to 50, but...
No, and in all likelihood, well, what it should do if it was healthy is it should drop again to compensate for the overinflation, and then it should start to rise on a stronger base, because we've started to repeat that pattern of inflating a little too fast.
Inflating which prices?
Well, like this whole bubble. For instance, when the housing market fell apart and everything crashed, there was a period of time for about 2 years when return growth just happened at too fast a rate. And part of that was because they were playing the same game again, where they were starting to increase the value of things. Like, for instance, the value of a house, somehow, the cost of a house somehow just went up.
Well, it went up because of Greenspan's policies encouraging people that we can have this new bubble-driven economy, and the housing market became one of the new bubble economies.
A second, yeah. So it went through this a second time. So we saw a rise that was a little too fast, and all the economic
and then
of
the
it were
interest
warning.
rates were cut. And that's the problem. The prices went up, but the price to buy the money became
Right.
super cheap, but then that got us in
And that doesn't
trouble.
work, exactly. So we had this whole system reenacted again. So a lot of people are saying the market needs to make a natural adjustment and come back down, 1, 2, 3,000 points to get back into a realistic ballpark and not have this inflated value that's worthless.
Actually, yes, that's... We'll see, because we will be covering this news as it develops. That's what we do here. I was just seeing if the CNBC article had anything worthwhile to add. A weak U.S. economy that isn't creating jobs and is adding tens of thousands of people to an already overburdened Social Security safety net every week will eventually lead to confidence being lost in the U.S. government's ability to repay its debts. I guess that is true. But that confidence is lost by those who hold our foreign debt, or foreign holders of our domestic debt, in which case China's cut back. Japan's become the number 2 buyer of foreign debt holders. Number 1 buyer of our debt, the U.S. government. That freaks me out. I mean, it's really strange how that, like, what, meaning there's just no way... these scenarios end up virtually the same. Both will end with complete and utter destruction of Americans' wealth, despite the mainstream notion that inflation is under control. I mean, that's what they're putting out in the news. Oh, there's no inflation. Of course, keep in mind, food and fuel is taken out of the equation for the CPI since the 1980s, which means, well, what's gone up the most? Food and fuel. I mean, rents have fluctuated somewhat, but it's the food prices that have totally jumped.
And they actually may be better indicators of the market, because food prices, to me, would indicate more of the cost of doing business. Not so much a bubble-driven thing, that is. Sure, it's affected, but agricultural prices are more affected by the petroleum industry probably than anything else, since we're so petroleum dependent.
And let's not forget, this is a little complicated, but agricultural prices are affected by speculation.
Absolutely.
Market speculation.
And again, fake money.
Well, they're able to buy futures commodities with no money down.
Exactly. And you know, the part of that scheme that works so well is that crop failure and subsistence is all backed by the federal government. There are policies that will put money in your hands if your crop fails or you don't reach a certain quota. So it's really kind of you can't lose. I mean, you may not always get as much as you wanted, but you won't lose entirely. It's insane.
Well, this is not going to stop. While timelines remain elusive because of their never-ending government intervention into financial markets and economies, the policies being instituted by central banks around the world can only lead to continued degradation of paper currencies and the rise in prices of all goods linked to those currencies. In January 2010, it was suggested that a strategy of buying physical commodities at today's lower prices and consuming those commodities at tomorrow's higher prices, the trend for fiat paper and physical assets had not changed and is in fact more pronounced now than ever before. The U.S. dollar is being systematically weakened until it no longer exists as a viable means of exchange. When this happens, you better be prepared to operate in a society where traditional money is replaced with mechanisms of exchange like precious metals, food, critical supplies, and production skills. The ability to build a house, the carpentry skills, plumbing, not TV. I mean, I suppose somebody might need a TV repairman, but refrigerators. In the collapse of the Soviet economy, fixing your refrigerator was number one on the list. You didn't throw it out and go buy another one. You needed a guy that could fix it, and you would offer him your food rations or whatever you had to make that happen. So learn refrigerator repair, learn actual skills. If you don't possess money, skills are wealth. They really are. You don't want to be one of these, the many millions of unskilled laborers that can't do anything and know nothing. Caitlin?
It's easy. It's interesting because Noriel says the same thing. The bottom line is that, and I'll quote him, over time, advanced economies will need to invest in human capital, skills, and social safety nets to increase productivity and enable workers to compete, be flexible, and thrive in a globalized economy. This is what we're talking about. This all comes back to supporting and enabling people. I shouldn't say enabling, excuse me. It's just supporting and empowering people, because the bottom line is what we do, what we make, what we produce, what we consume is ultimately what started economies and what drives them.
Let's take a little break. We'll come back, read more news. I'm Michael Wordsworth. You're listening to Caitlin Redding and myself on Breaking Down the News here at riverwestradio.com. We'll be right back.
You're listening to riverwestradio.com. Every day, people wake up all over the world and hear commercials like this one, with soft music and a soothing announcer's voice telling you how great some big corporation's new technology will help you and your family. But it is important to remember, these companies could give a flying f*** about you or your family. That's why Breaking Down the News has made this commercial to counter their commercials. Don't be fooled by them. The battle is to gain control of your mind through media propaganda. Just say no to evil corporations and their slick computer graphics designed to brainwash viewers. Vote no with your dollars, and we will regain the health of our nation, one consumer at a time.
And now it is time to make light of the issues.
Economists, that's right, economists. You know they're about the most useless thing. They're paid to be wrong 2/3 of the time. And I'm telling you, our economy, they keep telling us our economy is getting better, right? Right? I mean, what a joke. It's like Hitler reporting back to the German people that he's winning the war. Isn't it? Isn't it? I mean, just look at the jobs market right now. It's just ridiculous, huh? We must be having a jobless recovery. A jobless recovery. You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
This is Breaking Down the News, bringing you headlines that should have made the front pages. Streaming live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3:30 p.m. Central Standard.
And we're back. Thank you for joining us. Now, Caitlin, last week I reported that the government is now up to 1.25 billion rounds of ammunition purchased in the recent few weeks. Now, the Department of Homeland Security purchases 200 million more rounds of ammunition. Additional purchase includes bullets designated for snipers, following controversy over its purchase of around 1.2 billion bullets in the last 6 months alone. The Department of Homeland Security has put out a new solicitation for over 200 million more rounds of ammunition, some of which are designated to be used by snipers. Now, the reason why I mention this, I have to dovetail from quantitative easing and the state of the economy to when we realize how we were robbed, and we get the bill for this, and you get the bill. You don't actually get a bill in the mail. When I say it's a metaphor. When you get the bill for this, it's in higher prices,
Right.
less jobs, higher taxes, less services.
And less money, because when they erase that debt and throw it away, that's going to erase some of the money in your pile too.
And when we see the government, specifically this new Department of Homeland Security, which was started after 9/11 of 2001, we functioned forever without it, but now suddenly we needed it right after that, right? Well, there's a reason for that. It was all part of a plan, but now here's how this plan culminates. Do you realize, Caitlin, that 1.2 billion bullets in the last 6 months is more than the Army bought? It's more ammunition than the military itself purchases.
Which makes me curious.
Well, they're getting ready for a war domestically because oh my goodness.
How much does this cost, by the way? How much does it cost to buy that many bullets?
The joke is, you know it. Your money bought it.
Yeah.
Your money bought the very bullets that will be used against you when you disagree with the government's crazy spending. And keep in mind, when the economy collapses, which it eventually will, it'll either happen quickly or it'll go down in stages over the next 2 to 3 years. It has gone down over the last 3 years. Actually, it's gone down over the last 3 decades, but I don't want to provide a history lesson on finances going back that far. The point is that this recent purchase for all these rounds of ammunition, it's for the American people. The U.S. Army has been preparing for domestic disorder. Last year, Department of Homeland Security Chief Janet Napolitano directed ICE. ICE is that it's that Special Police Task Force. I can't remember what the actual acronym stands for, but Napolitano directed ICE to prepare for a mass influx of immigrants. That's supposedly to the United States.
Sure.
Calling for the plan to deal with the shelter processing of large numbers of people. Well, the thing is, you're not going to have immigrants from the United States. You're going to have people leaving the United States. The U.S. Army has been preparing for domestic disorder. A recently leaked U.S. Army military police training manual for, get this, civil disturbance operations. Civil disturbance operations. I mean, look, I'm not, oh man, what do you think that means? That means a lot of pissed off, unhappy people. When people lose everything, they tend to lose it. It's not a very rational moment, and there will be civil disturbance. And I for one, am not, I don't think burning down our cities or causing riots and mobs will help us. It's quite frankly, we need to get educated. We need to attack the actual issues. We need to get real, actual leaders in there representing us collectively. Otherwise, geez, I can't tell you. On page, just get this. On page 20 of this manual, released to military police for their training purposes, on page 20, rules regarding the use of deadly force. And deadly force, if you're ever in the military, means blow the guy away if you have to. Kill him.
Or you want to sometimes.
And that there's the rules regarding the use of deadly force in confronting dissidents. Dissidents, that's a fancy vocabulary word for we the people pissed off against our government suddenly becomes a dissident. The Iranians, after the Iraq citizens went from being called terrorists to dissidents. Well, it's disturbingly clear with the directive that warning shots will not be fired, meaning they will shoot to kill. And the manual includes lists of weapons to be used against rioters or demonstrators, including anti-riot grenades. I love that. I mean, you know, when I say that, I love that. I don't like the idea of grenades being lobbed under people, but holy cow.
Just the whole visual that provides.
Screw rubber bullets. Anti-riot grenades. You never think of a grenade being used in terms of anti-riots. Holy cow. It's kind of a permanent solution to the whole problem. It also advises that the manual given to the military police advises troops to carry their guns in the safe port arm stance, a psychological tactic aimed at making a show of force before rioters. Non-lethal weapons and water cannons are also included. Thank goodness. A certain percentage of the population is going to riot. They are going to panic, and rather than pulling together their political will, they choose to lose it and just go on a rampage, which it isn't going to help. Go tear up something that isn't ours. If you want to tear up something, tear up. You know what? I can't tell you to go on air to go tear up a government building, but
go build a trail. Go help build a trail. Go help dig a ditch. I mean, take that physical energy and go build some infrastructure.
You know that wouldn't happen, but I mean, I really would like to see instead of rioting, everybody went and started tilling up the soil or doing raised garden.
Taking matters into their own hands. Literally taking back.
Make up your own currency and use it locally.
That'd be great.
You might have to bypass the U.S. currency. It'll be toilet paper. Actually, toilet paper will be worth more than that currency at that point.
I think we'll find that things might get a lot smarter really fast. Like we talk sometimes off air about hemp. Actually, we talked on air about hemp. Going back to a sustainable crop that provides so many different products for us that's non-toxic. All these things that we're going to have to do in order to cut corners and not spend money on things. So. But my goodness, these are complex issues.
And they are, and we've run up to the 5 o'clock hour, which means...
I can't even slip in some promos?
Oh, slip in some promos.
Okay.
The guy who's coming on air next, he's not here, so...
we'll slip in some promos. Okay, yeah. Promo number 1 is for us. Let's talk about Friday. I didn't want to talk about it at the top of the hour, but Friday I think we're going to have an interview live with someone in the European community.
Oh, that's great. That's great. No, that's going to be Ireland.
Yes, we're going to be speaking to an actual patriot in Ireland.
And a very learned, experienced woman at that.
Yes.
Speaking from personal experience through decades of history that she herself has lived.
Yes, not only abroad, but in here, her origins are simple. And in Milwaukee, she's actually a graduate of Marquette University here. And a sorority sister at one point in time, although we, of course, will not name that sorority. But I'll be dialing her up, and we'll be speaking to her via telecommunications live on Friday.
Well, tune in Friday because it's going to be fascinating to talk to our sisters and brothers in Ireland.
Oh, she'll be talking about all of the subjects that we've addressed. She's going to be letting us know the knowledge that they have, the types of information available to them, and how they've been dealing with problems that we've been discussing the last 3 weeks.
And we'll find out we're not alone in the struggle against this globalist takeover. Globalism is the new colonialism.
It is globalism, absolutely.
And it's the new. We don't colonize countries that are third world anymore. It's all divvied up now. Now it becomes cannibalistic. We start to eat on ourselves.
Actually, genocidal. I think it'd be a more accurate
Patricidal.
thing. Well,
Whatever.
genocidal. Okay, promo number 2, quick before we run out of time here. Again, we're going to plug our own fundraiser for radio, riverwestradio.com. We're going to be at Linneman's September 28th. I'm sure you're so tired of hearing me say this.
Next weekend, September
Friday.
28th.
Friday.
Be there to see riverwestradio.com promoting fundraising. Freddie Lee Band on stage next weekend.
I could not have done it that well. Okay, so that's our promos, and anything else coming up? We're looking to do some other interviews as well. I don't want to mention names yet because they haven't been confirmed, but we're hoping to get some people in here to kind of update us on how they feel being in the industries that are affected with change right now, and how those changes are affecting them, like some of Monsanto's plans.
Monsanto. We hate them.
The evil within.
I love it because actually it's become very politically correct, both for liberals. I don't know conservatives as much, but I'm sure. But thank God we can, we're all agreed Monsanto is evil.
Well,
we can agree on this.
Sure.
Yay, get rid of them.
And conservatives, of course, would agree because Monsanto is an effective monopoly. They're trying to
genocide the human population on planet Earth.
And slowly but surely.
3 generations. Oh, I had an article about that somewhere, but
if not
we'll have
through
to
our food source.
Yeah, how there's a new GMO study. Rats fed lifetime of GM corn grow tumors.
Oh, yeah.
70% of the females die early.
I think we talked about that. And what did you talk about with France? Didn't France just kick Monsanto out?
France banned GMO maize from Monsanto.
Woohoo!
And Hungary got harassed by Hungary got shook down by our own government ambassadors saying Hungary rejected the GMO crops, and they got a lot of pressure. We're leaning, we aren't, actually, Caitlin and I, nor you listening out there, but members of our government, in behalf of Monsanto, are leaning like mafia thugs on small countries to push GMO crops like drug dealers.
And unlike the U.S. population, the European community is quite aware of these practices. As a matter of fact, that is one of the topics we'll be discussing live from Ireland on Friday afternoon.
Well, there you go. That's the news. Do we have any more announcements to make?
I think 2 promos is enough for anybody's patience.
Very good. And hey, I'd like to remind everybody that our radio show here has a website, breakingdownthenews.com. You can always go there and find the latest podcast, subscribe to the podcast, or check out the articles that we read on air. They typically appear there, especially once our web staff and news correspondents upload them. They're very busy. We got about a 20-person staff here working very hard to bring you this information. No, I'm...
Yeah, very much kidding.
We've got Caitlin, myself, Zav, Nick. I mean, it's not a... Man, it's a skeleton crew. That's the word I'm looking for.
We're putting on the show in Mr. McCleary's barn. Live for you.
Had to kick out Bossy. She kept bumping into the mics and spilling milk all over the equipment.
Oh, I thought it was the gas.
The diesel fuel.
Oh, not that kind of diesel. Biodiesel.
All right, well, we got to break on through to the other side here.
Who's supposed to be coming up next?
I don't know. It's Wednesday?
Yes, it's Wednesday.
Either Green Neighborhood. No, he came in on Monday.
He comes Monday.
Ingrid comes in on Friday. Who the hell comes in after Wednesday? What?
Bob, who comes in next?
We're consulting the great sage
and
of the video store.
I hear chopping going on. I think
he's eating food. Let him eat.
Let me take a look.
Well, it doesn't matter. Check the schedule and the thing. I got to pull out of here. I'm Michael Wordsworth. These have been words worth listening to. Peace out, everyone.